Thank you for that invite. Yeah, my name's Eric Allen. I'm a podcaster, I'm a father, husband, and I coach people on how to launch podcasts successfully. And so I know that there's a lot of like, oh, there's an easy way to do this, but I've been doing this since 2017. I've interviewed over 500 people, including Ed Milet and Brad Lee and Tim Storey. Some of those biggest entrepreneurs of the world have all been on my show. And so I love talking about that. Have a little bit of a backstory as well, but we can get into that later. But yeah, excited to be here. Yeah. Hmm. This is a great question because I think mental health for me really started probably around when my parents got divorced. I was 11 years old, and they got into a situation where my mom got together with a man who was very physically abusive almost immediately, and I didn't understand why my mom would never press charges or call. I'd have to call the cops, right? Like they'd show up all the time because I'd have to be calling the cops, and so that began to wear mentally on my mental health, right? And that led to me actually ultimately fighting that man when I was about 13. I had to hit him in the head with a cast iron pan twice because he was punching my mom in the face. And that led me on a destruction of life for about 10 years where I was very lost. I got into drugs very early on. By the time I was 18 years old, still in high school, got arrested for having drug paraphernalia, had to go to jail. By the time I was 21, I was bankrupt. I was $28,000 in debt, and then got into the music business. And I don't know how to play anything. I was working for Universal Records, but was able to live like a rock star, and basically have open tab at every bar or every concert I was going to 2 to 3 nights a week. And then just went into this massive depression after a year because Napster came around. If people remember that, it killed the music industry. I was part of that layoff. And so, really, mental health has been a battle for me throughout the years. It wasn't until I was invited to go to a church event by a girl that had come into my Starbucks that my eyes kind of started to open up a little bit like, hey, maybe this isn't normal. Like maybe my life is kind of on the, not the normal side. And it was a month after that I went to the church event with her, but a month later I went out and partied with my buddies, and I woke up Easter morning 2004 and just felt God saying, dude, you're going down this path that's going to end your life if you don't stop and start making some changes. And in that moment, I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything, and I gave my life to Jesus right then and there. And then I called that girl up, I got her voicemail, and said, hey, happy Easter. Maybe I'll see you at the store. And 11 months later, we were married, and we celebrate 20 years of being married this year. Yeah, I think it wasn't until So I'll go back a little bit. I was in at the music business. I was working for Universal Records, and I remember being at this concert in the middle of the week. And I remember, like, I'm in my early 20s. I'm 22, 23 at this time. And I remember seeing this gal who was there. Maybe she was like in her mid 30s, so not old at all. But in my opinion, at that age, I remember so clearly this moment looking at her going, I don't want to be her age and still doing this every night or every other night during the week. And it was in that moment that I really started like, I actually do want to be a dad someday. I actually do want to be married and have a family. And so that was kind of the first, I think, wake up call. But I think once I gave my life to Jesus, I had to take a step back and call my friends and go, look, you guys are awesome. I love you guys. But for me mentally, I need to take a break from going to the bars and doing drugs. And what I did was I replaced that with men that I found in the church that had great marriages. They were great entrepreneurs. They're great dads. And I just said, I want to take you out to coffee and I want to understand how you're living that life because that's the life that I want to live. And so it was in that early 20s, that area, that's when I really started to wake up out of that mental health issue. Yeah, I think it's very important for anyone that is going through that or comes from a family that's broken, or has gone through bad relationships, that we have to remember that our past and other people's opinions of us don't get to define our future, right? We get to define that. And once we realize that, we can step into our purpose and start making an impact by sharing our story, by starting that podcast, by writing that blog, by writing that book, right? And it's scary to do that. I was 39 years old when I shared that story 6 years ago. But ever since then, it's been making made a good impact. And I've connected with a lot of people who have reached out and said, man, I'm sorry that you went through that. I went through something similar, right? So it's very like relieving of weight and things like that when we can actually open up and share our story. Wow. Sure. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. That's the goal, right? Like if I can impact one person even, like that's then I've done my job, right? Like, you know. Mm. Yeah, I always say get around people that are living the life that you want to live. But, and there's a big but here, is make sure that the people that you're surrounding your life with, they also align with your values. They also align with the way that you want to live your life. Because there's a lot of people that have a lot of money, that have a lot of big houses and rented cars and all that stuff, right? But they're not aligned with your values. And so find those people that are could be your tribe, right? That are living life that you want, but are also aligned with your values and surround yourself with them. You know, I had Ed Milet on my show, and one of the things he said was, if you're walking around at 80 degrees, go find people that are walking around at 120, and just being in their presence is going to lift them up to want to be better, to do more, right? To make a bigger impact. And so, number one, change your environment, right? If you want to get out of the mental health, you know, thing that you might be struggling with, whatever that is, whether that's drugs or porn or whatever that is, find people that are living the life right. You got to get out of that environment. That's exactly what I did for me, right? Like I'd tell my buddies, I love you guys, but I got to take a break, right? I had to change my environment. That's step one. Number two, sometimes you do need actual help, or you need to go into a hospital. You need to like actually take a break. Maybe you need to go into a sobriety house, right, for 30 days or whatever that is, right? So rehab, right? Sometimes you do need to take those steps. But I think it starts with you changing the environment and then getting into a place where you can feel encouraged and in a positive environment where you know that you have the strength and the power to get away from that. Now, I'm a Christian man, and I believe that God can heal people, and God can get us on the right path of, you know, getting us away from things that we've gone through, and we can kind of forget about that type of stuff, and we can get into a happy place in life, or a better place in life. Maybe not happy, but a better place. And so I think one, just acknowledge that, change your environment, and actually get help if you can. Go to AA, go to church groups. I think, in my opinion, that's the best way to kind of heal yourself from that. Also, if you can help people, right? Then that also will lift your spirit. Maybe someone else is struggling and you can just go alongside them and walk that journey with them. That's huge for you to be able to do that. I think it's impossible to have a heart of gratitude and a heart of depression at the same time. Right. So if we can be giving away stuff or like helping people in their life, encouraging them and giving them positive vibes, I think that's really hard for us to feel depressed if we're helping others. Yeah, totally. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. It's so important for that. I would just encourage people that are going through life to, if you're struggling or with anything, right? Go find some help. Maybe like I said, maybe it's just people at a church, or maybe it's people that are living that you want to live. I found a lot of peace getting uncomfortable with myself and going to meetups in town, and I could just meet other people that were kind of like business people or podcasters, right? So I felt comfort in that, and that's not always going to work for people, but I think if you're struggling, ask for help. It's super important. I've had family members commit suicide, and I would never wish that upon anybody. It's a real thing, and I know that's a real struggle. And if you're struggling in that, I can just like I'm just praying for you now, and I'm just praying that you would seek the help that you need. Um, and I think the other thing that people need to realize too is it's not our job to judge people. My job is just to love people where they're at. It doesn't matter what you're gone through, or what color skin you are, or whatever that is. My job is just to love you where you're at. And I think if we can do that as the world, if we could do that as a world, man, I think that would be a huge change, and we would see this lift in mental health, right? If we could just loving people where they're at is truly important. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I would just encourage people to share their story. Like, find the strength to share your story, because there's somebody else that has gone through something similar. It may not be your exact story, but I would encourage you to share your story. And for me, it's podcasting. I think that podcasting is a legacy thing for me, because I wish that I could go back 3, 4 generations deep and hear my great grandfather's voice, and hear his story from him directly. And I can't do that, but I can do that for future generations down my tribe, and they can look back and go, man, great grandpa Eric had to go through some stuff, but he got through it, and he's a bad mama jamma, right? Like, that's the stuff that I want to leave. I want that legacy. So I would just encourage you, like, share your story, create a podcast, even if it's just you telling your story, it'll impact people. And it's so important to just like love people where they're at. And I think if we can do that, the world will be a much better place. Yeah. Yeah, and Naomi, I'll just say this: this is an amazing podcast, and obviously you have listeners that are listening to this show. But I just want to encourage them to keep listening, to keep sharing and subscribing to you, because your show and you sharing your story is super impactful, and you're an amazing human being. And I love that you have this podcast, and I just want to encourage you to keep going, because you are impacting people with this podcast. Come on, that's awesome, so cool. Let's go. Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Such an honor, Naomi. Thank you. Okay. Cool. I most definitely will. I am a guest who will share it out with my network as well. I'll also make sure that I subscribe and leave you a review on your podcast as well. This, you're doing an awesome job. I just want to encourage you that and keep going, because what you got going is really impacting people. Come on. Yeah. 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 Well, I think writing is another way that we can share that, right? We can impact people, and I did the same thing. I wrote my book 2 years ago, and then I literally scratched the whole thing and rewrote it the last few months, and changed it up a little bit. And I'm just about done with editing, so hopefully we'll have it up by the summer. But yeah, I encourage you on the writing. Keep going. It's so good to do that. Like I said, I will definitely share this out when it drops. Let me know. You can tag my pages on wherever you drop it at, and I'll make sure that the network knows about you too. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you. I hope that you have an amazing weekend, and we'll touch base soon. We'll talk. Bye bye. Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. Registered lessons over healing over mental health. I pray healing over PTSD. I pray if she doesn't know you, that she would come to know you, God, that you put people purposely in her life that would encourage her to come to know you, Jesus. I pray over Naomi, and I pray complete healing and surrender to you, Jesus. Amen. What's up, guys? That was an awesome podcast. I was just on, totally forgot I was on there live. Hey, I hope that you have an awesome day. Thanks for checking it out.